My name's Ian Fetty. I'm going to be moderating. For those of you who don't know me, I'm one of the product managers on the Chrome team. I work on a lot of the HTML5 and web platform parts of Chrome. And I'd like the other panelists to just give a quick introduction of themselves and what they work on as well.
Hey, my name is Paul Feldman. I'm working on Chrome Developer Tools and WebKit Web Inspector. I'm an engineer there.
My name is Jeremy Moskovich. I usually work on Chrome internals, especially on the Mac version. My 20% project is website compatibility, especially in Israel.
I'm Alex Russell. I work on Chrome Frame, which is a browser helper object for Internet Explorer, and I also help out on the web platform side.
I'm Brian Rakowski, and I'm one of the PMs on the team. I work mostly on front-end stuff.
So the way this panel will work is that we are watching tweets to Chrome IL panel. There should also be a microphone. Looks like there's not a microphone in the middle there. Can't see if there's actually a microphone on the stand. I don't think so. If you have any questions, feel free to shout it out. It looks like we'll also get a microphone in the middle there. So if you want to come up to that microphone stand, we can make that happen. Or tweet to Chrome IL panel. So to kick things off, I'd like to start off with a question to Alex over here, which is something that I'm sure a lot of people are thinking about. You know, we had some great talks on HTML5 features, and people are excited to use them. When can we actually use these HTML5 features?
Unfortunately, the answer is it depends. Hopefully much sooner than I think we've been able to use other new features in the web platform. So I work on a product called Chrome Frame, which is designed to help us make those features available much sooner by reducing the sort of the drag of legacy browsers, right? You can think of the legacy browsers sort of like pollution. So you've got organizations that are running old browsers, and they sort of emit bad applications into the web. And so you can think of sort of Chrome Frame as a scrubber on the top of the smokestack. So hopefully we'll get to use those new apps a lot sooner.
And Pavel, you, I know there's a talk later on about DevTools, but can you give us some sort of an idea of the plans and sort of timeline for developer tools? What's in the works?
So we're currently focusing on HTML5 capabilities, and we have several major themes that we'd like to cover. Currently we're working hard on remote debugging. We'd like to make it a part of the WebKit so that you could remotely debug any WebKit-based browser, whether it's a mobile headset or it's a full-blown browser. We are also working on the extensibility, and that's fairly important to us. We have a lot of requests for extensions that we can't put into the core product. One other thing is the Firebug feature parity. Firebug is a great product. It has been there for a long time. We'd like to make sure that all of the important features that are there are supported. So those are the major themes for us.
Sounds great. And again, if there's any questions from the audience, there's a microphone in the center there, or you can tweet your question. Switch over to Twitter now. So there's a question. Will Chrome support the standard CSS3 properties, i.e. without the -webkit prefix anytime soon? Is this a problem upstream?
So generally speaking, the WebKit community is a little bit hesitant to take the vendor prefix off of it until it's a ratified specification. So the W3C has a relatively long sort of gestation period for any new specification. There's drafts, there's editors drafts, there's recommendations, there's candidate recommendations, and then there's final ratified specifications. 11 years? Yeah, so it might be 11 years. So but the good news is that the way this works is that the vendor prefixes give the vendors a chance to sort of fight it out and sort of agree on what the right syntax is going to be. And then once it is blessed, you know, usually candidate recommendation, you know, you can go and implement the final version. And hopefully, in the best case, that's just taking the prefix off of it. So there are some cases like border radius, where WebKit does support it without the prefix now. And it supported it with the prefix for a long time. The way you tend to write your CSS is you have your sort of vendor prefix stuff, and at the bottom if you know what the spec is going to look like, or if there's a draft that you think is going to be, the right answer, you can write your CSS to handle it that way. But these things are, the web is a fluid thing. The web is continuing to evolve. That's one of its strengths. We're not, you don't break your entire application because some vendor prefix thing doesn't work anymore. So, yeah, you should expect those things to come off when the specs get closer to being final.
So from the audience, border radius is going to CR next week. Obviously, as things progress, we will work upstream to make sure that the feature is supported without the prefix. That's.
So the other part of this question is, what's the Chrome process for picking up a WebKit revision that does include sort of a new, a change, sort of like that? So we have the 3 channels that you're probably familiar with, dev, beta, and stable. And so the lag, if you will, between when a new feature shows up in dev and when it's in stable is sort of measured in months, which is sort of a land speed record for browsers, right? Getting a new feature sort of from initial code out to a browser with an average time of months is pretty amazing. So, we'll be there for you when the spec is relatively fresh.
Okay. What about WOFF support for web fonts?
Adam Langley is on it. So for those of you who aren't familiar, WOFF, WOF for short, I guess, or terrible name. But it's a great spec that Mozilla has sort of put forward and has built a consortium of font vendors around. So one of the hardest parts of the web font story so far has been getting the font founders, the folks who actually go and create and hint and do all of the work to make beautiful fonts, getting them to license their content to folks who want to use fonts on the web. So for a long time now, various versions of WebKit and Firefox have supported just consuming raw TrueType fonts. And WOFF is like a raw TrueType font with a header in front to provide metadata about who bought the font, where did it come from, who's the publisher, that sort of thing. So it's not a lot of extra work. We do have support today for the font face with regular TrueType files and OpenType files, and so we should expect to see that relatively shortly in Chrome.
Next question is, so Chrome extensions currently support 19 by 19 pixel buttons. Is there going to be any support for more visual options aside from this, such as running HTML up in that space?
So in terms of extensions, we've always talked about offering some different kinds of extension formats. Right now it's just browser actions and page actions. And so far we found that those are pretty powerful, but of course they can't do everything. Right now you get an icon, you can badge the icon with some text. People have done that for notifiers and things like that. But it's limited, and that's by design. We are adding more APIs though. And there's a little bit of tension between making the extensions platform powerful and exposing new forms of UI and conforming with the aesthetic that is the Chrome browser, and making sure that extensions don't take too much real estate or add too much distraction. So based on developer demand, we've been adding APIs and new capabilities. We don't have any plans that I'm aware of to add different types of icons in the browser action or page action area. But it's not outside the realm of possibility.
Seems like a lot of people are amusing themselves with sending hilarious tweets to the big screen. I'd ask that you, at least for the next half hour, try to keep it to questions if at all possible. Will the Chrome browser support something like Firefox's NS is web progress listener for iframes created in the pop-up? File a bug report and we'll look into it. You can honestly, like for a lot of the, when I gave the talk about HTML5, I said that one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we, the browser, give you, the application developer, all of the APIs that you need to create the applications you want. And so the flip side to that is that if we're missing something, if there's some functionality that you need, the best way to communicate that is A, write up an application that shows what would be cool if you had this, especially if you can show us why it's cool, but B, file a bug so that we know someone is actually wanting it. We are an open source project. Our bug tracker is open source. You can go to bugs.chromium.org and file bugs. We do watch all the bugs that come in. We triage them. We act on them. So if you have a feature request, the best way to do it is to file a bug. I mean, obviously, like asking it in a forum like this does get our attention, but at the end of the day, we tend to forget things that aren't written down. So please do file a bug.
Yeah, to add to that, there will be a session at 3 p.m. about contributing to developer tools, where I have a slide with all of the links for submitting bugs and the way we're doing it. I'll be talking about the way we're tracking those. So if you're interested in filing a bug or feature request or contributing in terms of patches, I would encourage you to stay and look at it.
Can we put events on objects drawn inside of Canvas? I don't think so.
So objects inside of Canvas are immediate mode. So you draw, and it gets sort of composed down to just a blitted thing. It's a series of pixels by the time it's done. So Canvas doesn't have any concept of objects like SVG does. There's no sort of stateful representation of them. What you can do is you can do your own hit testing. So if you want to know, you can give the canvas element focus. So by giving it the focus attribute and then watching keystrokes from there, you can capture keystrokes with a hidden text input element. For mouse events, it's a little bit easier. You can watch mouse events over the entire canvas, and you can determine where they were dispatched from, and based on what you drew, you can do it. This, I think, is actually sort of an architectural failing of the Canvas spec. It doesn't have any idea of this sort of stateful event delegation thing, so you have to build it yourself, but you can if you need to.
So Web SQL versus indexed database API, thoughts? I'll take this one. So I think that both have their place. Web SQL database, for those of you who don't know, there's two database APIs that are sort of at various stages of their standards lifecycle. The Web SQL database API got introduced first and exposes more or less SQLite to the web developer. There have been some concerns brought up around this about if you want to have multiple independent implementations of this API that can interoperate. It's currently a little difficult since the dialect of SQL is not specified. It's basically whatever SQLite does. This is not good for being future-proof. At the same time, it is a useful functionality. We see a lot of web developers using SQL on the server side. To get around this sticking point, we started work on a new API called the Index Database API, which is sort of like an ISAM database, meaning that what you get is a table with a single key, and you can do matches against this key. So there's one index, it's on the key column of the table. You can't create additional indexes on other columns, and you can't do any complex queries. You can't do any joins, you can't do any query refinement. If you want to do complex queries, you do that in application logic, in JavaScript. And we expect that there will be APIs and libraries built up around the index database API to make it more user-friendly. The advantage that it has, although it doesn't have all the functionality of SQL, is that it's very easy to specify. It's easy to prove that there are multiple independent, compatible implementations. So I think going forward, we're definitely going to see the index database API move forward. There seems to be good momentum there. In terms of Web SQL database, I don't think it's going to get dropped anytime soon from the browsers that support it. There have been some people talking about trying to actually specify the dialect of SQL that's appropriate for that API. So if that takes off, I think you'll see more browsers support it. That's the main sticking point. It really sort of remains to be seen whether anyone is going to spend the effort to actually specify out a dialect of SQL that is easily implementable on top of multiple database backends. So next question. Can Chrome change the theme in reaction to websites' design or code and offer full immersion? Brian is shaking his head, and I think that means no.
Yeah, I think the answer is no. I think it might be a bad idea to change the Chrome of the browser based on the web page you're going to. From a security perspective, if nothing else. I mean, you kind of want the Chrome of the browser to be a little bit sacred. Am I answering the right question here? You're looking for a changing of the theme based on the page you're on. The most you can do is try to change, get the user to install a different theme. And that's something that, we released themes a while back. We've seen some users excited about themes, but we haven't put a lot of new effort around user-generated themes so far.
So I missed one question on here. There was a question about, is there a robust updated spec for those new technologies outside the W3C? And I think this is, I'm actually not sure what this is in response to. So in general on WhatWG, there's a complete version of the spec that includes things that have been sharded out into different specs in W3C. So if you haven't seen that, I'd go to whatwg.org, take a look at what they call the complete spec. That's probably the best place to find everything smashed into one. So next question for the panel.
If there are audience questions, feel free to head up to the mic too.
Yes, there's a mic right in the center if you care to be brave. This is a great question. Where did Firefox screw up that Google needed to start Chrome?
It's an interesting question, and I think we can all probably add a little bit of perspective to it. I guess I want to be very clear when I start out and say that Firefox has done an amazing job of helping drive the web platform forward. They're still doing great stuff in the standards body. We've talked a lot about specs and capabilities and standards process, and without Firefox, I don't know if any of that stuff would be happening. From a product development perspective, one of the things that we've seen, and we'll see if it also happens to Chrome, but over time, you built the product for a certain era and a certain age, and then you can find that things change. You might want to take a fresh look at it. And Firefox did this. It came from the old SeaMonkey suite, the old Mozilla suite, and they tried to cut a lot of features out and rebuild some things, and that's what Firefox became. With Chrome, we want to take a fresh start and try some new things out. Some of them have been successful. Some of them were kind of crazy and they didn't work. We're trying to focus on the ones that worked well and build a really solid product. And Firefox is starting to do a lot of the same things. So they're making their JavaScript engine much faster based on some of the things that we tried and seemed successful. So I wouldn't call it a fact that Firefox screwed up. I would say, they're trying some stuff, we're trying some stuff. It's pretty healthy to have competing open source projects out there, sharing ideas, borrowing ideas from each other. And I think the browser market's much healthier based on the fact there are a couple of open source products with a friendly rivalry. Do you guys want to add anything?
Okay. So next question then. Can we implement an HTML renderer that works on top of Canvas and not suffer from any more layout bugs?
And by any more, you mean anybody else's but yours? Because that's the outcome. So you'll be running a version of the layout of a layout engine, your layout engine, which only has the features that you've implemented and the bugs that you've implemented. By the by. So, you could do this. Will somebody else do this for you? I think that would actually remove the benefit that you're looking for, which is to say knowing everything that's happening inside the system.
And would it be fast?
Would it be fast? It might run fast enough for some things. HTML engines do a lot more than I think a lot of people who naively want to go sort of like, just get this thing out of my way, gosh darn it, assume that it does. For one, text is hard. Text is really hard. Internationalized text, localized text, right to left text, accessibility. These things all sort of compound the complexity. of it, and browsers are really fast at laying out text in a flowed manner. So you could do this. It might be fast enough, but I think the big limiter for an engine like this will be the amount of code that you have to send down the wire when you start the page. Right, so browsers have this amazing leverage, not just because they're written in C++, that's sort of great, but orthogonal to the fact that they're already running by the time they hit your page. So all that stuff is swapped into memory, it's already running, it knows how to interpret your page, and it knows how to do most of this work for you. So which is why apps that sort of try to build up the world in JavaScript tend to be less responsive than apps that just sort of use Judo on the browser platform and let the browser do as much work as the browser is capable of.
So what is the worst compatibility issue that's facing the Israeli web? Oh, sorry, there's audience question.
A general compatibility issue. Since Google is a content company mainly, have you ever discussed refusing to serve users that, for example, use Internet Explorer 6 to level the market instead of doing, for example, the Chrome frame?
Oh, I see, it's for me. So certain Google properties are dropping support for Internet Explorer 6 specifically. It's worth noting that they're not doing it out of spite, right? They're not dropping support for Internet Explorer 6 because there's something terrible and wrong with it. Let's be clear. Internet Explorer 6 was the very best browser on the market when it was released in 2001. You know, I spent a number of years sort of plumbing the depths of what's in there. And for the constraints that it was built in, like Brian was talking about, right? You build a browser for a particular time. And that means hardware, software, network capacity, you know, APIs. There's all these assumptions built into a browser. And so IE6 just, it's been eclipsed. The computer in my pocket is faster than the computer that IE6 was designed to run on. So it's just old. So the result is that things just don't scale well in IE6 anymore. So an interpreted JavaScript engine isn't going to work with what we want to do for, say, Google Docs. And so Google Docs has dropped support for IE6. You know, Google Wave won't run on IE sort of any version right now. So these are the sorts of places where our expectations change over time, and that's healthy. And so the browser population needs to change with it. So yeah, apps are going to start, and I think a lot of apps, not just Google apps, but a lot of other apps are going to start sort of like making this cost-benefit analysis. Chrome Frame is a way to help them make that cost-benefit analysis sort of not in isolation from their customers' demands about, you know, supporting existing applications, but sort of like acknowledging them and helping them along. But no, the Google Chrome Frame is not, I think, what you'd term a long-term plan, right? Plan A is always browser competition. We want users to get better browsers, get browsers that are auto-updating, that are working better over time. And plan B is to help the population that can't do that or won't do that along.
Great. So I believe we are coming to the end of our time. There's another great session here by Pavel on Chrome DevTools. So I'd like to thank the panel so much for being up here. Thank you all for coming. And please do enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks.